Well, good evening and welcome back to the Man Cave for another episode in Mull and Bikers Travels, shall we say. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for all those that commented and subscribed and watched my birthday video, my 70th birthday video. I was amazed. I thought it was too long, but the response I've got was brilliant. Either way, on to the next one. Now, as I've mentioned several times, I suppose, I was a coach driver, a tour driver in Scotland, and one of the places I worked at, certainly during the winters, was a little place called Portpatrick on the Galloway Coast in Dumfries and Galloway, and it was a great place. I really enjoyed working there. And I visited some marvellous places, and what I'm trying to do with this next 3 videos is show you exactly what I experienced. In this first one, this is a trip down to the Mull of Galloway, down the east side of the South Rhin. The Galloway headland is a double headland effectively, and there's a North Rhin, a North Headland, and a South Rhin, which is a South Headland. And right at the tip of the South Headland is the Mull of Galloway, and there's so many stories to tell and things to look at. I was hoping I was going to find my way back to a short video, but I just can't do it. I've got so much to talk about, to forewarn you, that is. But have a look at it, see what you think. Again, if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done already, and let me know what you think. Send me a comment. I always reply to them. Thanks a lot. Well, good morning, YouTubers. Welcome back to Mull and Biker. Wish I could say I'd had a nice night's camping, but supposed to be here for 2 nights. It's lasted for 1. My wonderful new self-erecting tent actually self-destructed in the early hours of the morning whilst I was still in it. Oh, joy of joys. Anyway, my good friend Tony at the Crown Inn down in Portpatrick has taken pity on me and done me a deal. So, a bit drafty as well this morning. The weather forecast, as usual, can't be trusted, but either way, we're going to go on our little trip once I get my clothing sorted. Going to go down to the southernmost point in Scotland, which is the Mull of Galloway. It's a lovely piece of countryside down there, very spectacular as well. But just before we go, Dunsey Castle over the way. There's been a castle there since around about 1200, but the Adair family, you come across a lot of Irish family names here in Galloway, and that's because just a few miles over the way, you might be able to see it with this camera, I don't know, but that's Northern Ireland. Mountains of Mourne are over there, and the entrance to Belfast Loch is marked by a big chimney, which is directly in front of me now. Yeah, it came into the ownership of the Adairs 1500ish. The tower house was built as it stands now. Well, it was complete when it was built, obviously, but it was built about 1580 towards 1600, and the whole thing was completed about 1620. However, there was all sorts of falling out across here. The main problem family around here was the McCullochs, who are a little bit further down the coast. But either way, the place fell into disrepair, and it was effectively in ruins by 1700. So it stands as a very spectacular ruin overlooking the the North Channel. This stretch of water here is the North Channel between Scotland and Northern Ireland. Anyway, onwards and southwards. Stories to tell and all that. One of the more spectacular campsites I've stayed on actually is Castle Bay here in Portpatrick. Anyway, I'll switch off now and I'll see you in a few minutes. Travel around here, you'll see a lot of what would be palm trees. They're not actually palm trees, but they do grow here because it's that old story of the Gulf Stream brings warmer air currents in with it off the Atlantic. And although it was very windy last night, it wasn't a cold wind. We're just coming to the village of Stoneykirk. But just before we get into the village, there's something I want to show you on the left here. This is the burial ground. This again is one of the routes I used to take with the coach. But in the coach we could see over the hedge. But I'm going to go in and show you. There's a row of wartime gravestones in here. And these were pilots and crew that lost their lives during training exercises, because just over the way is now MOD West Fruch. It's had various different uses, but during the Second World War it was a training station for air crew, mainly in gunnery and bombing practice. So these are all guys that lost their lives, paid the ultimate price, I suppose you'd say. One or two that weren't identified, but by and large, as I say, they lost their lives during training exercises. And we'll have a little bit of a closer look at West Fruch, and I'll tell you the story of its history as we get there. It's only a couple of miles away, just the other side of the village of Stoneykirk. You can see the church. You would think that Stoneykirk means a church built of stone. Now, research has shown that this place the name was left behind by the Vikings, and it was Steenacher, Stony Acre. But then the church was built, so it became Stoneykirk. Let's get back on Blizzard. Waiting patiently. This was all part of an optional excursion for our coach passengers, and I always volunteer to do it, to drive it. and commentate on it, because I found it so very interesting myself. I really enjoyed it. I've often said that my job as a coach driver, particularly up here in Scotland, was just a paid holiday really. Being paid to drive around places like this, and further north of course. So yes, the church is here on the left, but it isn't a church anymore. It was deconsecrated in 1988. Such a waste of a building. I'm not desperately religious, but I do appreciate church architecture, ecclesiastical architecture, I suppose. And it's such a shame to see it going to waste. Either way, that was Stoneykirk. And just over the rise in front of us, we get quite a commanding view out over what is now MOD Westbrook. I have heard tell locally it's become a NATO base of sorts, but I've not worked up here since pre-COVID, so I may have lost touch with developments. But this place has had a lot of uses over the years. Now over to the left you might be able to make out one of the main runways. There are two runways here, hardly ever used but maintained just in case. It's over on the left there. The place's initial use, you can see the buildings, non-typical buildings I suppose you call them, in front of us, and those are the buildings of the base. Now during the First World War it was a naval air base, and what, along with one or two other bases around here, what ran out of here were very basic airships, and their job was to patrol the coastline, because the Germans in the First World War, the earlier submarines, there were U-boats as well, but the earlier submarines, I suppose they weren't all that, shall we say, waterproof or airtight, watertight and airtight, so they had to come to the surface, and they were patrolling, looking for targets, shall we say, looking for prey. So these airships would take off and patrol the coastline. We're looking for these submarines when they came to the surface, and we're told that what they had on board was a pilot and a navigator, or an observer I should say, and the observer's job really was to, they carried a load of Mills bombs, like giant hand grenades, and dropped these Mills bombs to try and inflict some damage onto the vessel below them. When they ran out of Mills bombs, they drew the service revolvers. Now what they were hoping to do with the service revolvers is anybody's guess, but we're also told that when they run out of bullets, they just leaned over the side and hurled abuse at the errant submarines. Believe that if you like. But then it became a training base when the RAF formed after the Great War. It became a training base for the RAF, and as I say, it was a training base for gunnery and bomb aiming, that sort of thing. Now the next village is the village of Sandhead. We're not going to go through Sandhead because there's a bypass to it these days, and it's just what's called a strip village. They're built just houses on one side of the road, on either side of the road, just a strip of houses. It's grown a bit since it was first built, but it's just over on the left. And the most spectacular part of Sandhead is its beach, and we'll get a glance at its beach anyway. Very short. Up on the right is Balgreggan Mott. Balgreggan, this whole area to the right of us. Balgreggan was, it became known for various different things. Balgreggan Mott, that was the site of an ancient wooden fortress, but it was used by the Royal Observer Corps as a spotting post during the Second World War. Back behind us was a quarry where way back in the 1800s a farmer found a hoard of Roman coins known as the Balgreggan Cord. And then further over to the right still, you can see nothing of what's left of it, was Balgreggan House. Balgreggan House was I've seen pictures of it, I've seen paintings of it, and it was a mighty fine place, but it was demolished in 1966. Story locally is that the guy who owned it was a strong Scot, a genuine Scot, and he was so annoyed at England winning the World Cup that he took it out on his, whether that, well, believe it or believe it not. Now this is Sandhead School. Now this school, allegedly, the headmaster in 1940, because this was a replacement school and it was due to open in 1940, and because the government, the War Office, were taking over so many large buildings as an effort towards the war effort, he was worried stiff he wasn't going to get his new school. So he asked his pupils' parents if they would mind sending them back after the summer holidays a fortnight early. That way he'd get the kids into the school, and the War Office would be finding it very difficult to take it off him. Apparently there's still relatives of those kids who still hold it against him, even though he's long since gone. But that was Sandhead School. Flippy heck, temporary lights out here, that's a first. Well, it is to me. Now I did see a couple of gratifying sights as we came across by West Fruch. One was the Isle of Man in the distance. The Isle of Man is fairly close, but you can't always see it because of sea mist. The other one was Big Scare. Now you can see over to the left, you can see land on the left, that's the Whitthorn Peninsula over on the left, and the stretch of water between the Whitthorn Peninsula and ourselves is Luce Bay, L-U-C-E. The River Luce runs into it a few miles behind us. Now whether you can make it out or not, on the skyline, over to the left a little bit, is a curious shaped rocky island. That's Big Scare. They used to be the Skerries. They were named the Skerries at one time, but an awful lot of groups of islands have been called the Skerries, and they changed the name of it for one reason or other to the Scares. Big Scare, and it does look like it really. It looks like a battleship from some directions, and that was used, that big rock out there was used as a target for gunnery and missile aiming practice. I don't think it still is. And this is Ardwell. This is another strip village. You'll see what I mean by a strip village as we pass through it. Just one line of cottages on each side. These cottages were estate cottages. Over the trees on the right is Ardwell House. You can't see it from any direction really. and these are built as estate workers' houses, estate workers' cottages, all sold off now, of course. Very nice wee places. So you've got Logan House Gardens on the right here, and then further over to the right is Logan Botanic Gardens, which is an annex of Edinburgh Botanic Gardens in actual fact. The place is managed on their behalf. Now we're coming down towards the southernmost village and harbour, for that matter, in Scotland, and this is the village of Drummore, and I can see what was causing the splashes. On the way down here I've noticed one or two splashes out to the left. Not fish jumping as it turns out, but gannets. You won't be able to pick them out on the camera. I can see them because I know what I'm looking at. There's a couple of them out there. The gannet is a spectacular bird, really is spectacular. It's got binocular vision. Both eyes point directly forward. What it means is they can see the fish very, very clearly from the air, and then they just go into a vertical dive, fold the wings against the body, and hit the water at about 60 miles an hour. Terrifying sight if you're a fish, I should imagine. But like I say, very, very spectacular seabird is the gannet. Quite common. This is a lovely piece of coastline. You can see Big Scare a lot more clearly now. I'm sure you'll be able to see it on the camera now, out there to the left. And it does indeed, from some angles, look like a warship. It's not a sandy beach down here, it's a rocky beach. One or two bits of damage to the seawall. I've come through here with the coach following serious stormy weather, and when you've got an easterly like the beast from the east, shall we say, yes, I tell fibs, it is a bit of a sandy beach. The wind actually picks the rocks up from the beach and batters the seawall with them and throws them all onto the road. There was one occasion when we just couldn't get through. Had to find a way of turning the coach around and go back around, take another route. Just to give you some idea of how far south we are here in Scotland at Drummore, on the same latitude across the map on the east coast, we're about level with Hartlepool. It's always a bit strange really, people from the likes of Newcastle coming across to Portpatrick for a holiday are actually going south into Scotland when you think about it. Pleasant little village is Drummore. There's the harbour. Hardly anything can get into it now because it's so badly silted up. There's Drummore Harbour, just the smallest of boats, small fishing boats. This is Stair Street. Nice looking couple of bikes. Now this church, or kirk I should say, is the start of a tale from local folklore, because this is the church of St Meden. I'll carry on with the tale now I've mentioned it. Meden was an Irish princess apparently, allegedly, or at least Irish nobility. And she came over to Ireland about the same time as the Irish nobility and Irish monks were coming across to introduce Christianity. We're talking 5th, 6th centuries now when they came across. And Meden came across. She didn't come across to introduce Christianity, she came across for another reason. She came across, I was just checking, I was still recording. She came across to escape a stalker, in modern terms. There was an army officer across in Ireland that was besotted with Meden. She was a raven-haired beauty apparently, and this fellow was besotted with her, and he followed her everywhere she went, so she came across to get away from him. And it didn't work because he followed her, he found her down here. And the story goes that a little distance in front of us and down to the left, down by the seashore, we can't get there, I can't get there with these boots on. She'd gone down to a natural well, and he followed it all the way down there. And she could see him coming, so she climbed a tree, a nearby tree. And he found her, and he stood waiting at the bottom of the tree, as if to say, I can wait as long as you can wait, you know. And she shouted down to him, what is it about me that you find so special? Why can you not leave me alone? And he looked up and he said, it's your eyes. Your eyes are so beautiful. I'm besotted with you. I can't get you out of my mind. And it's your eyes that turned me on to you in the first place. And she did nothing other. Hard to believe, I know, as are some of these stories. She plucked her own eyes out and threw them down at him on the grass and said, there, my eyes are so special, take them. And of course, without her beautiful eyes, the magic wasn't there anymore. And this soldier, officer, whatever, headed back to Ireland with his tail between his legs. Literally. And Meden, in great pain, climbed down from the tree and found her way to the water in the well. She could hear it burbling away, and she bent down and bathed her eyes, bathed her face, bathed her eyes. And you know what? She regained her eyesight. She must have grown another couple of eyes or something. And ever since then, that's been known as Meden's Well. And she had a chapel built. The chapel, the ruins are there, but the chapel itself isn't there anymore. Like I say, some of these stories you have to take with a pinch of salt. A big scare is way out to the left of us now. But clear all the same. The land beyond is the Isle of Whithorn. the cradle of Christianity for Scotland. Ninian, who became Saint Ninian, came across from Ireland back in the 4th century, made his way to Ballantrae, and then wandered down here and made that his base and had his chapel built there. And it's been a pilgrimage for many leaders. One of whom was the Bruce, Robert the Bruce. Now that's the way down to Meden's chapel, down to the left, down that little valley. Just marked on the OS map as ruins, of which there is little left. Just about make out the mountains and Bourne over to the right in the distance, but I don't think you'll be able to see it through the camera. Like I say so many times, I can see it because I know what I'm looking at. Now this down here, this is a narrow isthmus of land. Down to the left is East Tarbet, and down to the right is West Tarbet. Tarbet is a word that was left behind by the Vikings, by the Norsemen, and it means crossing place basically, and this may be where they dragged the boats, the longboats, across from one piece of water to the next. But it's a certain fact that in the past fishing boats have been taken from one side to the other. This was a little harbour for the lighthouse keepers, in actual fact. Being down here was almost like being on an island for the lighthouse keepers. Yes, I'm fairly sure I've read somewhere that fishermen have dragged the boats from one side to the other to avoid the troublesome waters, or the troubled waters shall we say, down at the Mull itself, the Mull of Galloway, because there are 3 currents that come together just off the headland, and it does make things tricky. But the waters that featured in a feature film. The film never went to general release for some reason. It went straight to DVD, as they say. It's a shame really, because it wasn't a bad film. The star of the show was Gerard Butler, and the filming of it was down here. It's based around a story way out beyond the Outer Hebrides, the Flannan Islands. In 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers went missing completely, and it's an ongoing mystery that's never been solved. And this was this story. It was called The Vanishing eventually, and it's about the 3 lighthouse keepers and one possibility of how come they went missing. But they filmed it down here, and we were down here with the coach one Wednesday, and there were vans behind. I could tell there was a film crew, and we gone for a cup of coffee in the Gallycraig coffee house, and the crew came in, and the redoubtable Mr. Butler was one of them. The women on the coach were having fits. I couldn't see anything special about him, to be honest, but I'd be worried if I could. So that's the That's the Mull and Galloway Lighthouse, directly in front of us. Spectacular sight. Another of the many Stevenson lighthouses up here in Scotland. The Stevenson family of Edinburgh took on the task of building a vast majority of the lighthouses around the Scottish coast and on the islands, and what are known as the rock lighthouses as well. So there's Luce Bay and there's the Atlantic, and right in the distance are the mountains of Mourne on well, just almost at the Irish border. Well, I'm going for a cup of coffee at the Galley Craig now, so thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. I've loved it coming out here, I really have. But yeah, give us a thumbs up if you could, if you like it, and yeah, make a comment. It's always nice to read people's comments, even if they're less than complimentary. But yes, thanks a lot.